So first, I just want to say I have incredibly high expectations for you. Huge. One of them is that, of course, you are probably generally for the most of your life going to be standing in front of audiences speaking. So I'm hoping that everything you're going through today, you're listening to at two levels. One is a participant, and second is as a speaker, how are you going to be doing, and who's doing good, who's doing bad, who can do better. I was really enjoying listening to Walter speak and talk about his personal story, integrate, talk about really hard things like his mom, the loss of his mom, talking about books that inspired him, bringing poetry into it. And how often do you hear poetry in an activist situation? Far too few. So like how can we learn from the people who are in front of us? I kind of want to talk about three things, three numbers I was thinking about. One is the number 1 trillion, the second is the number 10 billion, and the third is the number 3. 1 trillion is the number of cells you have in and on your body. 1 trillion cells. Now, 90% of those cells are not human. 90% of those cells. There's the bacteria in your stomach, the things on your skin, the germs, 90%. So of the 1 trillion cells in and on and around your body, most of them aren't human. You are a part of nature. You are nature. And for anyone who tries to suggest to you that we're apart, we're different, there's a fight, there's a battle, there's pollution, there's that, we are just one thing, or one bit of it, one connected part of it. And the challenge for us, for you, over this next period, is to solve this 10 billion challenge, which is that by the year 2100, there'll be 10 billion people on the planet. And people can argue about population and all that, but in the end, there will be 10 billion people on it. And our challenge, of course, is how do we create a planet where people can live and thrive and have great qualities of life, and we solve some of the challenges of generations past, from sexism to racism to keeping people locked out of the economy, to the access to food and shelter and water and healthcare, basics like that. And how do we make sure that the resources on this very small blue planet can stretch across 10 billion people? That will be the work of your life. And it's this generation's challenge to figure out how that actually happens. How do you get 10 billion people to have enough resources and access to them to live and survive on the planet? So in that context, I have to tell you, as someone who's been an activist from my high school years, I think that we're doing kind of a terrible job. And that's sort of not a great thing, because I actually think you should blame people like me who've been activists their entire life, because we haven't done what we're supposed to do. If we're supposed to make ourselves be able to survive and thrive and make the planet survive and thrive, we haven't done that. We're not doing enough at all. So it puts an enormous burden on your generation to figure out how to do that and how to do it differently than it's been done in the past. And what I think I'll suggest to you is that some of the great work that Teens Turning Green has been doing, some of the things you've been participating, are kind of hints to what that might be. But I don't want to take your responsibility away from that, because I think you're actually going to have to invent it. I think you're going to have to invent a new type of, whether it's environmentalism, sustainability, whatever word you might want to place to it, a new type of activism to figure out how to solve that 10 billion question. How are you going to do that? So when I graduated college, I became president of the Sierra Club. I was 23 years old. And I remember when I got the job, I thought, oh my God, I've just tricked them. I've just tricked everyone, because if people actually knew what I knew and what I didn't know, there'd be no way I would do it. I was 23, I couldn't even rent a car at the time. So I was just not really able to do it. And I went to sleep with like a huge headache, thinking someone's gonna find me out in the morning. And the phone rang really early in the morning. I told you this story. I picked it up, it's like 5 in the morning. Hello? Yes, hello, this is the White House. Yeah? We'd like you to come and explain your vision to the President and the Vice President of the United States of America. Who is this? It was, and I sort of got a haircut, got a new suit, and I got in the red eye that night to go to DC, and I spent the entire night up trying to write down a vision. I'm not Deepak Chopra. I didn't have a vision at the time. So I spent that, I was up, there was a crying baby, and by the time I got there, I was exhausted, and I was sort of ushered into this lecture room where Vice President Gore, who was the Vice President at the time, was actually giving a talk on trading air pollution permits, which by now you know is an incredibly important and incredibly complicated and ultimately failed framework for solving climate change. And as he was giving this very detailed explanation of this, I fell asleep. Which would not recommend for you to do on your first day of the job when you're in the White House. I knew I was asleep because I heard, Adam, Am I boring you? I had gotten the vice president's attention on my first day on the job, which is a good thing. It's a good thing, but not quite like that. No, I sort of said, embarrassed, and kind of left my tail between my legs. The reason I share with that idea, that story, is because you will probably, hopefully, not fail like that, but in many similar ways throughout your activist career. And for me, it was actually a very valuable lesson, because actually I realized that in the suit, with a haircut, in DC, in a formal policy conversation was not the place that I actually could exercise my form of activism, which was much more about being out and talking to people, grassroots organizing, trying to connect people with the way they live. And the work that Andy and I are doing now, working on sharing and trying to find new ways to approach the economy and better ways to buy things and have things and access things rather than own things, that feels much more natural to the things that I like and I enjoy. And I think that's going to be your challenge too. You're going to be told how to be an activist, how to actually serve the world, and you're instead going to have to discover the right way for you and invent a whole new type of activism around that. I mean, that's super exciting, right? But you're going to be told many, many times that you don't know how to do it, and the truth is, you probably do. You just have to figure out how to get really good at what you're good at doing. So the final number I gave you, we talked about 1 trillion, 10 billion, was 3. And these are just 3 lessons that I was given in high school about ways that you could, it was presented to me as 3 ways to save the world, get into college of your choice, and get the job of your dreams. So it seemed pretty important. I figured I might as well share those. The first was to think big and start small. And there's all sorts of versions of this. Think globally, act locally. But think big, start small. Really simple idea. But the thinking big is a critical one here. That we need you to think on a planetary and really even a universal level in this context. Think big, start small. The second is to not let the negos get you down. And the negos are all the people, and you know who they are, who tell you you can't and will tell you which reasons why you can't. You're not old enough. You haven't done it before. You don't have the experience. You haven't read the right books. You haven't graduated yet. You're too young. You don't have enough money. All the people who say that, I mean, listen to them. And from now on, just go, okay, that's one of those negos. That's one of those people who's telling me I can't. And I'm just going to tune them out and know that probably I can. And number 3 is to be creative. To find a new way to solve these problems. And I really want to push this, because the worst thing you could do right now is just say, all they have to do is suck up all the great knowledge of this in the past and then just execute that. Because I wish there was a book in this library that had all the answers. There is not. You perhaps will write that book, but it has not been written. And what we desperately need you to do is to be creative and to invent that new set of actions. Think big, start small, be creative, and don't let the negatives get you down. So finally, I guess I just want to say thank you. Because one of the best things that you do by taking on challenges like this is you inspire everyone else around you. And this is to Teen Stream Green. This is to the speakers. I guess the reason why I brought Pearl and why I'm so proud to be here is that what you do inspires other people. And at certain moments, activism can be very, very lonely and very alienating because you're different and you're pushing other people. But just never forget that little thing that you did, even if you think no one noticed, someone probably did. And some 6-year-old is probably listening and inspired without you even knowing it. Thanks for having me.